All right, diving in today. And this one's particularly interesting, I think. We're looking at this, well, it's almost a paradox, right? Freedom in censorship,
Yeah.
and how we can find strength, even defiance, when things get tough. And you specifically mentioned literature as a way to do that. So naturally, we're going to be spending some time with Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451.
A perfect choice, really. It throws a spotlight on what freedom means, especially when it's being suppressed. And what's really fascinating is how the sources you've chosen, they're all over the place, but they all kind of come back to this idea, right? Freedom, control, resilience. You've got Gramsci's prison notebooks, Thoreau's civil disobedience, even man's search for meaning. And then there's that mindful wisdom from wherever you go, there you are, and the heart of Buddhist teaching. It's like freedom's not just out there, it's also in here.
Yeah, exactly. And we're aiming for that, you mentioned a soft, light look at all this, and it can get heavy.
It can.
So we'll be weaving in some humor, some insight, looking at how even small creative acts, even community, even just simple joys, those can be acts of defiance when you're under pressure.
Absolutely. And, we want to offer hope, strength, the idea that even when things are really hard, they're not permanent, especially if we use our critical thinking skills.
Right. So what we're going to do, basically, is blend these big philosophical ideas with, well, a calm, thoughtful approach and maybe even some humor to lighten things up. We're going to be digging deep into Fahrenheit 451, really looking at censorship, the power of ideas. It's all about inspiring you, helping you see that hardship that's not the end of the story, especially when you think critically.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so let's jump right into Bradbury's world, shall we? Fahrenheit 451 paints this really unsettling picture of a sobriety where books are, well, they're burned, and thinking for yourself is actually dangerous. They've traded real happiness for this kind of manufactured surface level contentment, and anything that might make them uncomfortable, anything that might make them think too deeply, well, that's just not allowed.
Yeah, and the scariest part is how deep this control goes.
Yeah.
It's in their homes, in their relationships. Look at Mildred, Montag's wife. Her whole world revolves around these parlor walls, her family, as she calls them. They tell me things, she says. I laugh, they laugh. And the colors, it's just, well, it's all so artificial, so empty.
It's chilling, really. And the way she's terrified of Captain Beatty, terrified of what might happen if they find books, it's like the thought of losing their investment, those parlor walls, is scarier than losing knowledge, losing her own humanity. That question, why should I read? What for? It's like
Yeah.
she doesn't even understand why learning, why thinking matters anymore.
Exactly. But then you have Montag, right? He starts to see through the cracks. It's those shocking moments like Mildred's overdose, the way they treat it at the emergency hospital, so casual, like it's nothing. That damnedest snake analogy they use. And then the woman who chooses to die with her books sets herself on fire. It's like these events start to wake him up to the emptiness of their lives.
You're right. He can't ignore it anymore. And then that question, we've started and won 2 atomic wars since 1960. Is it because we're having so much fun at home we've forgotten the world? It's like he's finally seeing the danger of this society that just wants to be entertained and ignores the real problems.
And this whole situation, it's not just some dystopian fantasy. There are parallels to real-world power dynamics. Like, we don't have
Mm.
to go too deep into Gramsci, but his idea of cultural hegemony, how dominant ideologies become the norm, not just through force, but through subtle influence, is happening in Fahrenheit 451. It's like Beatty and the firemen. They're not just burning books. They're shaping how people think, equating knowledge with danger, instability.
Right. And you can see shades of Thoreau's civil disobedience too, can't you? That idea of following your conscience over unjust laws. Montag's journey is all about that. He's listening to his conscience, defying the rules, even though it's risky. It's like he's saying, no, I can't just blindly follow laws that feel wrong.
And what makes Fahrenheit 451 so powerful is how Bradbury shows us that even in this oppressive world, literature, defiance through literature, it can be a powerful weapon. When Montag reads Dover Beach to Mildred's friends, it's this seemingly small act, but it blows their minds.
Yeah, their reactions say it all. Mrs. Phelps, she starts crying, even though she doesn't really know why. And Mrs. Bowles, she's angry, like he can't handle these raw emotions. They're so used to this numbness, this artificial peace, that real feelings just freak them out. And that line, the sea of faith was once too, at the full. It's like this huge statement about how empty their lives have become. Sharing literature, it's a small act, but it has these huge
Right,
ripples.
and it connects so perfectly to the core of what we're talking about. It shows how powerful art and ideas are, how they can break through even the strongest walls of conformity. It's like that idea from the Braving the Wilderness worksheet, having the courage to speak up even when it's unpopular. Moncagui's definitely doing that.
And then there's that whole idea of preserving knowledge, which is so important, especially when it's under threat. That group that forms at the end, the people who memorize entire books, it's such a powerful image, right? They become living books. It's their way of resisting, making sure that knowledge doesn't disappear.
It's inspiring, really. They find strength in community, a shared purpose. It's like even in this horrible situation, they create this little pocket of hope, of resistance.
Hmm.
And it ties into the idea of community and simple joys, right? They find joy in each other in their shared mission. It's beautiful.
It really is. So, shifting gears a bit, let's think about something else. We've talked about external freedom, but what about inner freedom? When the world is trying to control your thoughts, your feelings, how do you stay free inside?
That's where Viktor Frankl comes in. Man's search for meaning. His experiences in the concentration camps, they teach us that even in the worst imaginable circumstances, we can still find meaning. It's like he says, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's inner resilience. Even when everything is taken from you, you still have the freedom to choose your attitude, to find meaning.
It is incredibly powerful. And it makes me think of mindfulness, those ideas from wherever you go, there you are. Mindfulness meditation for everyday life. John Kabat-Zinn talks about concentration, right? It's the capacity of the mind to sustain an unwavering attention on one object of observation. Like even when there's chaos, when people are trying to control your thoughts, you can still create this inner space of peace, of freedom by focusing your attention. It's like finding a quiet spot in the middle of a storm.
Right. And by focusing on the present moment, on our breath, as Kabat-Zinn suggests, we're actually pushing back against all that external noise, all those imposed thoughts. It's a way of reclaiming your mind. And that idea you mentioned, thinking freely and open, it becomes this kind of internal rebellion. It's recognizing that even when the world is trying to control your thoughts, you can still think for yourself. That's a powerful form of defiance.
It's funny, we're talking about some pretty serious stuff, but you mentioned humor and insight, and I think that's so important. How can we use humor? How can we use those moments of insight to build resilience when we're dealing with censorship and control?
That's a great point. Even in the darkest times, a little bit of humor, a shift in perspective, it can give you a sense of control. It's like when you see the absurdity of censorship, the flawed logic behind it, it can actually be empowering. It's like, oh, this is ridiculous. And suddenly it doesn't feel so heavy anymore.
It's like that Mullen Nasruddin joke. Why don't you do what I do when I turn corners? I just shut my eyes. It's so silly, right? But it highlights this illogical approach to a problem. It makes you laugh, and maybe it helps you see things a little differently.
Yeah, it's all about finding those unexpected perspectives, those little moments of light in the darkness. It reminds us that even when things are really hard, we can still find humor, we can still gain insights, and that can make the pain, as you said, big but beatable.
And one last thing I wanted to touch on is this idea that hardship, it doesn't last forever. And critical thinking, that's how we get through it. Even in Fahrenheit 451, there's a glimmer of hope at the end. That community-preserving books, it suggests that the love of knowledge, that spirit of resistance, it can survive.
Right. And that hope is so crucial. It reminds us that even the most oppressive systems, they're not invincible. They can change. And critical thinking, questioning what we're told, questioning the world around us, that's how we navigate those limitations. And that's how we ultimately challenge them, maybe even overcome them. It's about recognizing that hardship is a part of life, but it's not the whole story, especially if we think for ourselves.
Okay, so wrapping things up, let's look back at what we've learned from Fahrenheit 451. We've talked about how even a small act of literary defiance, like sharing a poem, can be incredibly powerful. We've discussed the importance of inner freedom, of finding that space within ourselves even when the world is trying to control us. And we've seen how humor, how those moments of insight can help us build resilience.
And the main takeaway here, it's all about finding hope, finding strength in those small acts of resistance, and never giving up on thinking for yourself, even when it feels impossible.
Exactly. And before we go, one last thought for you to ponder. In our world today, we're bombarded with information and censorship control. It can be really subtle. So it's more important than ever to think critically, to preserve different ideas, different perspectives. It's like, what books would you save? What knowledge, what ideas are worth protecting, and why? That's something worth thinking about, something to keep exploring.